Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, the radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-host, Ethan Milrod. And on our show today, we'll be learning and talking with Mike Dever, founder and CEO of Brandywine Asset Management, Fernando Suarez, president of Fernando Suarez and Company, and Bonnie Sewell, founder of American Capital Planning. We'd like to introduce Mike Dever, who's the founder and CEO of Brandywine Asset Management. Mike, what is Brandywine Asset Management? What are you guys doing?
We're an investment firm that protects people's portfolios with funds that have exposure to stocks, but protected on the downside.
And where are you from originally?
Was born in Cleveland, but I've been in the Philadelphia area for 50 years.
And how young were you when you moved from Cleveland to Philadelphia?
Third grade.
And give us an idea. What were you up to 8 to 14 years old when you were a kid? What kind of stuff did you get involved with?
I got really captivated by the space race, so I got involved with model rocketry and anything related to science.
Model rocketry. And did you tell us that your first business stemmed from your interest in model rockets? What was that all about?
It really did. It was a company that I set up with my brother called STAR, which was scientific team of aviation research, and we sold model rocket plans.
Wait. You were at the age of 10, we started with your brother a business selling model rocket plans. Tell me more about that. That's a little strange.
Well, we started getting into model rocketry at a young age, and I was looking at some of the other models that people were selling in catalogs, and we started designing our own and building our own and launching our own rockets and realized that we liked them better than what was in the catalogs.
So wait a minute, from a young age, you were designing stuff that was better. What's that have to do with this Brandywine Asset Management nowadays?
It's really the same thing. You know, I look at something, I look at how people are investing in stock market, for example, and realize there's a better way to do it that can help protect them on the downside.
All right, just wanted to make sure I understood. Ethan, what are you thinking?
Isn't what you're doing today a very precise thing, Mike, for your clients?
Absolutely. Everything we do is very systematic, very structured, and follows a set process.
What would you say is the correlation between that and, learning about rockets when you were younger?
Well, there's obviously a lot of precision in both. If you make one small mistake, you have a failure.
Absolutely. Going back to the STAR business with your brother, can you talk a little bit about what your role was and what your brother's role was in the business?
He would probably tell you I pretty much drove it. The business, we had an article in the Daily Local News around that time, where he was quoting that, Michael does the designs. I was really into the design of the rockets and drafting them and doing a lot of the building with it. He helped out, but, I probably really, it was more my idea.
What's that have to do with Brandywine Asset Management?
I guess it's the same process. I drive that, same precision and, systematic process to get to the end goal.
Ethan, you want to ask Michael about his sports career?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about you. You were telling us earlier in the green room that at a young age you got into sports. Tell us a little bit about what kind of sports and what were you doing?
I was track and field. I did a little soccer, but mostly I was track and field. I ran a lot during. I was fast. I was a sprinter during elementary school, and then took it on through junior high and high school.
What other events in track and field did you perform in?
The one that I ended up specializing in was pole vault.
Pole vaulting, really? That's a unique sport.
What was it that attracted you about pole vaulting? Why pole vaulting?
Pole vault has so many elements in it, and everyone has to be done precisely, or you could get injured, or you're not going to perform well.
And you mentioned the reason that attracted you is because a lot of the other kids were afraid or they found it too challenging, but it doesn't sound like you were afraid or too challenged of the 1,001 variables that add up to be a successful pole vaulter. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I loved it. That was what attracted me to it.
What attracted
you? The variables, the challenge in the variables. I didn't have a problem with fear, which was great, but just the fact that there were so many things that you could do to improve any single vault.
What's the pole vaulting and your attraction to pole vaulting and the fact there were 1,001 variables and you sort of like that? What's that have to do with this Brandywine Asset Management?
Oh, it's identical. I mean, there are so many ways to make mistakes in investing. And if you follow a structured process, you can eliminate most of them.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds to me like you like coming up with better ideas and that have 1,001 variables that all need to be analyzed all at the same time. You really love a challenge, it sounds like.
Oh, absolutely. And with investing, there's just so many opportunities because people are still stuck in old ways of doing things. So there's a lot of opportunities to improve on it.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any partners in the business?
I do. I have one partner.
Tell us about your partner.
He's been in the industry for 40 years, and he came to me after reading a book I wrote in 2011. It became a best-selling investment book, and he came to me after reading that and said, I want to work with you. I'm tired of what I've seen in the traditional industry that he's been involved in.
Mm-hmm. What's different about the two of you?
And how does it work? Different, I guess. That's different. I mean, we don't look at something that is and say, okay, that's how you do it. We look at it and we're constantly trying to figure out a better way to do it.
So you like figuring out better ways of doing things. It sounds like it started with developing plans for model rockets and selling the plans. And you also mentioned there was a spirituality with the rockets. What was that all about?
Well, I grew up in the space race. So we had men leaving the Earth and going to the moon and going into space. And to me, I still get, shivers thinking about it. It's just a remarkable achievement that we did that stuck with me ever since.
Shivers thinking about what?
About what we did, about for millennia, people dreamed about leaving the Earth. And I lived in that.
Yeah, what did that teach you about attaining things in life? What did that teach you about attaining and what's attainable in life?
Pretty much anything. If you really put the effort behind it and you use your brain.
What do you mean? Tell me more about that.
Well, I mean, obviously the space race took just a huge, phenomenal effort. We were just at the point where we had enough knowledge to be able to execute on it. We weren't very far along. I mean, it was just within the decade prior to that, we developed enough technology to be able to get people to go into space. And the fact that we were able to corral hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in that effort, it's just a phenomenal achievement.
So what's all that have to do with Brandywine Asset Management?
So we're obviously not on that scale. We don't have millions of people that we require to put the effort in place, but there's still the same out-of-the-box thinking that's required to come up with better ways to invest, similar to was to come up with better ways to get into space or get to the moon.
Have you been involved
now? Probably now more than ever, that will be presented as a challenge to you. How do you see that moving forward?
I think that we were talking to some big institutional investors just over last week, and some of their talks about what we're doing is it's a game changer for retirement industry. It's a game changer because it allows people to remain invested in stocks, but not have the same downside exposure that they're.
Have you been involved in any other businesses? I get the strange sense that you have, Michael.
Yeah, over the years, a number of different things. Mostly, though, from my career, I was involved starting in '79 with trading and investing. In the '90s, I got very active. I started a company called Spree.com. Within 2 years, we were the 7th most trafficked e-commerce site on the web. So you had Amazon and eBay, and Spree was number 7.
And that was, again, because you had a better idea?
I think that was a good way to put it. We had a way that people could come onto the web, sell products, and we had a viral method for finding customers for those people who were setting up storefronts and for Spree.com.
So your middle name is Better Way.
I like that.
Hey, Mike, going back to Star, how did you and today as you were figuring out new things, how do you know when you had it? How did you know it was it for Star at 10 years old?
I didn't really think about it. It was just something we enjoyed doing, and we saw that we had plans and rockets that were better than what we saw in the catalogs. Mm-hmm. So from my standpoint, it was just, let's just do this. I didn't think about it.
What's the What's the website address for this organization known as Brandywine Asset Management?
You can go to brandywine.com, but we have a video describing our fund at abetterwaytobuyandhold.com.
Well, let me have that again.
abetterwaytobuyandhold.com.
abetterwaytobuyandhold.com or brandywine.com.
Correct.
And we've been speaking with Mike Dever, who's founder and CEO of Brandywine Asset Management. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. That's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. And we'll be back in a moment right after this break. You now can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Simply visit executiveleadersradio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your advisors. Yes, this radio and online social media exposure is free and quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit executiveleadersradio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-host, Katie Brewer, the Brewer Group. And we'd like to introduce Bonnie Sewell, founder, American Capital Planning. Bonnie, what is American Capital Planning?
American Capital Planning is a fiduciary fee-only wealth management firm, and that just means we manage money for our folks, and we manage the folks that we manage money for. We also do financial planning, and there's two other things we do: divorce financial planning, and when a business owner wants to sell their business, we help them get out at maximum value.
Where are you from originally?
Outside of Chicago. I have an older brother and a younger sister.
So you're the middle of three. And what was going on with you 8 to 14 years old? Was it sports? Was it the marching band? A lot of babysitting, racing cars? What were you doing 8 to 14 years old?
I did do some babysitting, but around the age of 9, my dad left our home. And when he did that, he took his pension and his paycheck, and he left 4 of us behind and to fend for ourselves, and we did fend for ourselves.
You had to go fend for yourselves. What was your mom doing for a living when your dad left?
She wasn't working. She was a stay-at-home mom, and she loved that role, but she had to go back to work. She had been trained as a young woman with the Catherine Gibbs Secretarial School. But when she started to look at secretarial jobs, she wasn't going to earn enough to keep us in our home, and she wanted to keep us in our home because she wanted us in the same schools where my grandparents and parents had gone. That was important to her. And so she became a waitress at a Sheraton hotel in the catering department. And over the course of a decade, she worked her way up to the catering manager, and we all worked for her in high school.
So your mom, as opposed to working as a secretary, which would have been a little bit easier, she wouldn't make enough money. She worked extended hours as a waitress and worked her way up to the catering manager. And then her kids ended up working for mom in the catering facility?
Yeah, that was very long hours. And she talked about breaking down tables. She was a petite woman, so a lot of physical work in that job as well.
Okay, you guys went to work with your mom, who was the catering manager. So what was your role in the catering facility?
Yeah, I was a waitress. And so I did Sunday brunch and I did weddings and the occasional other event.
Tell me more about, so when you guys were doing the catering, did you just do exactly what was expected of you, or did you try to get away with as little as possible, or what did that role, what kind of personality traits did you bring to that role?
Yeah, you don't know my mom. I was a little scared of her. She was a petite woman, but she was very firm. And so my job, and I also knew how important it was for her to keep her job and to look good. That was clear. So my job was always to do a little bit more and a little bit better than I was asked to, but we were asked to do everything from fold napkins, and back in the day they folded them fancy, just like they do today, serve meals, coffee, really whatever anyone asked me to do, it was a yes, and how fast and how well.
But it sounded to me when we were talking earlier, like you ended up doing it all, not just because you were told to, but because it was your nature to take it all on, to take responsibility. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
What's that have to do with what you're doing nowadays?
Well, because
Didn't you say to us earlier that as opposed to just doing X with your clients, you like to do Y? Isn't that the same thing you did as a waitress with your mom supervising it, but you did it anyway because you like being thorough?
Yeah, it's much more rewarding to do more than you're asked to do and to see that helps somebody. So I like that part a lot. We were...
you like what part a lot?
The idea that you can do more than you're asked to do and it helps someone. So
but that's extra work. It takes more time. It's more aggravating.
Well, maybe. I mean, I actually think it pushes off redos and mistakes. So I'm more comfortable doing more up front.
So you like to do it right the first time.
Yes.
As opposed to bringing them the wrong dish, the fish or the meat, you want to bring them the right dish the first time so they really appreciate you.
You know, you just saying that, I can hear my mother. But yes, definitely.
So what's that have to do with this financial planning stuff you're doing with your clients? I don't understand the connection there.
Well, we like to think we're changing lives because Americans often don't understand their money and they don't connect their money to what they want to do. And that is why we don't take on investment management clients that don't do financial planning, because the investment management's the easy stuff, believe it or not. I know my industry talks about it differently, but the financial planning is the part that now you understand why you're investing and how, and also really, I think in this particular time period, what difference does it make if you have money if it's not connected to what you care about in life and what you really want to fund?
So when your mother went back to work, that wasn't a common situation to be without your parents during the day. What happened with you and your siblings?
It wasn't common. We were one of two families in our community that had a broken home, as they used to call us. We were never broken, just a little broke. But we became latchkey kids, and a lot of trust in neighbors and friends, and they were wonderful people. People looked after us, and that was a huge help to my mom. She worked long hours. She was tired when she got home, and she had the confidence that between us paying attention to what she asked us to do and neighbors helping out, we got through and we did.
How did that impact your personality growing up?
I feel like I'm always impressed and alarmed when people don't plan for rainy days. I expect trouble to show up at some point, and I'm pretty sure I can get through it.
And how does that relate to what you do now?
Well, we tell clients, please expect rainy days and trouble, whether it's markets or, losing a job or any number of things that can come our way. That's just, if you're breathing long enough, you're going to run into these hurdles. And so how do we overcome those, or how do we get through them? And it's okay to be afraid, and it's okay to be sad and upset. And then what? We have to move on.
And you've had that experience, so you can share that with your clients so they know that there's going to be a rainy day someday. Look at what happened to you all of a sudden.
Yeah, and I have 30 years of stories of other people successfully overcoming hard times. So it's a big library of we're all in this together.
Bonnie, what do you find meaningful in terms of what you do for a living?
When someone says, I never thought of that, that's meaningful. When someone says, oh my gosh, you changed how this ended up concluding, that is meaningful. So, and people are wonderful about sharing the good news when it happens. So we're very excited. In the divorce planning, it's a really tough earthquake for people. And if we can get them from one side of the river to the other, it's really good to see the family go forward in the best way they can under rough circumstances.
It sounds to me like you're doing with your clients the same role you took on with the family. You really felt that you wanted to go to work with your mom and your siblings because you wanted to make sure that she looked good. You wanted to keep the family together. You wanted to keep things connected. You wanted to make sure you got through paddling through the river together. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing with your clients. Do you ever meet with your clients and their families and play the same role with your clients and their families that you did with yours?
We do. We have clients under contract as young as 22 that are part of a family that we've been working with for a while. For children under 26 who don't have their own funds, we also work with them to try to teach them about money. I'm involved outside my work with Girl Link, which is age 12 to 13, and their moms.
Why do you do that?
I don't want another generation of American women to have no money knowledge and lack confidence around money.
Wait a minute, that stuff you're doing, what was the name of that organization you were talking about?
Girl Talk.
Do you get paid for doing that?
No.
Why do you do that?
Because I know it's not easy for one little person to change the world. That's my attempt to leave a mark on women who can do better than maybe their moms or their grandmoms.
And how do you help them do that?
We talk to them about money. We help awareness. It's not a lot of charts. You'd be surprised where it goes, but we ask them questions about their own family and money. We ask them to do thought experiments, like the next time you go to a store, look around, who's working and earning money, who's buying and spending money, just integrating money, because if you think about it, it's attached to everything. So we want them to be aware and ask questions that they care about getting answered.
Wow. It sounds like you're healing a lot and bringing a lot from your childhood right into what you're doing professionally as well as volunteer. What's the website address for American Capital Planning? AmericanCapitalPlanning.com. Let me have that one more time.
AmericanCapitalPlanning.com.
You're going to speak with Bonnie Souls, founder of American Capital Planning here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, please stick around because we will be back in a moment right after this break. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-host, Ethan Milrod. And we'd like to introduce Fernando Suarez, President, Fernando Suarez and Company. Fernando, what is Fernando Suarez and Company? What are you guys doing?
We're an accounting company with 25 staff, and we begin the very beginning of talking about your business, establishing your corporations and your entity, taking it through bookkeeping, accounting, payroll, and taxes. Throughout that, we service about 500 business clients.
You specialize in the Hispanic community in and around Philadelphia. Is that true?
Yes, I'm very fortunate to be from Colombia, but I was raised in Philadelphia. So my foot is in both worlds. And I concentrated on the Hispanic market because I have a vision of bringing the Hispanic community up to the Anglo-Saxon world.
What was going on with you 8 to 14? You told me you had an incident with your father that you think shaped your life. What was that all about?
Yeah, one time I threw a baseball and it just happened to go through a window. And my father looked at the window. He says, from now on, you're paying for everything, including that window. And ever since then, I paid for everything. I started working. I paid for my high school. I paid for my college. There's everything I paid for. I think it was the best lesson my father could ever give me.
Tell us, how young were you when you started making money and what were you doing?
I was 13 years old working at a gas station right next door. I would work at a home center called 88 Home Center, which is like a Home Depot. And then at 5 o'clock, I would finish there. And then from 5 to 10, I would go to a gas station, the Shell gas station.
You learned about working hard at a young age, and you also learned about saving your money. It sounds to me like you've got some great characteristics to help tune in other business people. Ethan, what are you thinking?
Yeah, well, first off, I'm just wondering what effect has that had on you and how does that show up from what you do every day?
Well, I remember my first relationship, mother, my first child says, man, you're cheap. And you're like so cheap. And I'm like, this is how I know. This is how I was taught. My mother and father would make me cut napkins in half so we'd have double the napkins. I can give you hundreds of examples. We would get in trouble if we didn't turn off the light when you would leave the room. So those things really formed me. And I managed to save money where I had a whole lot of real estate properties. And it was only through savings and never spending the savings, always continuing investing. So I got into the multi-millions of dollars just through real estate alone.
Tell us what were mom and dad up to? What did mom do? What did dad do?
My mother worked in a factory, and my father played the guitar, and he managed to support us and because he was very popular, he went from playing in nightclubs to owning a nightclub. But it actually was that I started a team disco, and it was instant success. Within 3 weeks, I had to close the doors down because it was packed. So I said, Dad, this is going to be a success. Let's get a liquor license. And all of a sudden, he was the main star of the discotheque. He was the main star of everything. And it was a very successful nightclub, hardworking, middle class.
Tell us a little bit. It sounds like you had some very early success, but it also sounds like you had a spiritual awakening at some point. Tell us a little bit about what brought you to that spiritual awakening and what happened.
Well, at 50, lots of things were happening. 2007 era where the whole thing collapsed. And at that moment, I got a divorce. I was building apartments in Dominican Republic. I was developing Dominican Republic. I was running a tremendous amount of real estate. I was starting to do a public company, and everything all of a sudden totally disappeared. I had to say, wait, what's going on here? I had to wake up, and through my crying, because I was crying, one day I felt like taking my life. One of my best friends took me to a Christian church, and I walked in and I started crying. I knew that something had happened. I wasn't sure, but I started asking questions, and then I met Jesus, and through Jesus, he put me in front of many pastors, and he put me in front of people that made me had me communicate with God, and God said, don't be mistaken. I'm the one who took these people away from you, and I'm the one putting new people into your life. So all this is happening, and I became very interested and started getting aware and becoming spiritually awakened at that moment, which is basically 6 years ago when I was 50 years old.
You said something earlier to us that really hit home. I'm just wondering what you meant by it. You said you have this mantra, living peace by giving peace.
The turmoil that I went through losing everything was unbelievable. And the only thing I could do was just sit and discover what was going on. So I met Jesus. I started reading the Bible. I started going through all this. And I eventually got to becoming one of the founders of a healing circle with a co-founder of a healing circle, where I met a lot of wonderful people that know what spirituality really meant. So I started connecting Jesus and spirituality and who I am, and everything got to where, wow, the best place to be is within yourself and knowing yourself. So most people don't know that. And I went to a pastor one day and I said, what's all this happening? He says, Fernando, this is very simple. Your story is the story that you're going to promote through those thousands of businesses that you're putting together, and not letting them go through the misery.
Fernando, it sounds to me like you developed a sense of safety through your spirituality as opposed to safety through money. Am I correct with that assumption, or am I mistaken?
Money is a vibration. Money does not exist. You are 100% correct.
What do you mean? Tell me more.
We're vibrational. We are energy. And depending on how you vibrate, depending on how you manifest everything to your life. So, you take a look at a person like Donald Trump. He's the art of manifestation.
But tell me a little bit about that lion in the background. What's a lion mean to you?
The lion is a symbol of our office, and the lion is a symbol of myself and the theories that we have here. The lion works in the family, works as a group, doesn't work by themselves. So my whole thing through all my companies is joining families and uniting things together. One of the biggest characteristics of a lion is vision. They see 7 times more than a human being does, and I believe that's my forte.
What are you talking about? What do you mean?
Well, I envision about 1,000 stores working together, communicating just like we're communicating here, but talking and asking them exactly what's important to them. And I've discovered that through my 33 years of business. I've listened to hundreds of thousands of interviews of my clients, and I understand what connects them all and where they come from and where they want to be and who they really are. So through this communication and through this vision, why we want to unite these people, first under a company called the Small Business Union, which are 3 nonprofits working as one, and then eventually through a public company where we're going to unite our money together and unite the money through food and unite.
So it sounds to me like you've got a real desire, a real nature to organize the community, to really help and support the Hispanic community, the businesses. Am I correct about that?
When I was in front of my father's nightclub, I asked him, what should I do, Dad? I'm ready to go work for a public company, an accounting company. And he says, son, I don't know what you should do, but I do know that if we united the Hispanic market, we'd be powerful. So ever since that, I was like 21, 22 years old. In my mind, it's only been, how do we unite this market? How do we unite this market? How do we unite? And through all the as an accountant, I follow the money, where it comes in, where it goes out, and how it flows through businesses. So I see the entire economy, how it works politically, socially, and economically.
Ethan, last question. What do you want to know?
What gives you the most pride?
Really listening to people and seeing what their dream is.
What do you mean?
I want to help them with their dream. I listen to them, and all our dreams are basically the same, but individually they don't know that they're the same. So basically listening to their dream, making their dream come true, and then bringing them to my dream.
Well, Fernando, what's the website address of Fernando Suarez and Company?
Yeah, SuarezOffice.com. SUAREZ office.com.
Give me that one more time.
SUAREZ office.com.
SuarezOffice.com. We've been speaking with Fernando Suarez, president of Fernando Suarez and Company, here on Executive Leaders Radio with my co-host Ethan Milrod from Go2. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. That's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. And we'll be back in a moment right after this break.
And your name and organization is?
Shelley Castorino, Watch Maloney.
And what's your role and what do you do in that organization?
I'm the Director of Marketing and Business Development. I'm in charge of image, brand, and making certain that we find the correct clients that match our skill sets.
Where'd this come from in you?
I grew up in a small town, and we knew everybody, so every time I met somebody new, I was excited to find out why they were there, what they needed, how could we help.
And what's that have to do with what you're doing nowadays? I'm trying to figure the connection there.
When we go out and network and meet clients, I ask what they need in accounting services or tax, and how we can find our services that match what they need.
So it sounds like you're really built for your gig. It sounds like it really fills you, what you're doing. Does it feel like work?
No, I really enjoy meeting people every day. That's what I do, and putting people together.
Yeah, it sounds like you're like the natural connector. What's your website address?
It is wm-cpa.com.
Let me have that one more time.
wm-cpa.com.
And this has been your Business Spotlight. Recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, Executive Leaders Radio. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Simply visit executiveleadersradio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable. Yes, this radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit executiveleadersradio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors for free exposure. Back, you're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Susan Apgood, CEO of News Generation. Susan, what is News Generation? What are you guys doing?
News Generation is a media relations company that focuses on getting our clients on radio and television to tell their stories.
Oh, interesting. And where are you from originally?
I'm from South Orange, New Jersey.
South Orange, New Jersey. How many brothers and sisters?
I'm the youngest of three.
Youngest of three, South Orange, New Jersey. And what were you doing like 8 to 14-ish?
At age 8, I did start a magazine that I wrote articles for, had my friends write articles for, and then I sold it throughout the neighborhood.
All right, hold on a second. You're 8 years old, and I can understand mowing lawns, babysitting. You started a magazine, so give us the functions that were involved in starting this magazine.
I had a couple friends that I knew from school who wrote articles. My brother loved to ride motocross bikes, so he was my distributor. And my dad would make copies of the magazine at his office, and I would put them together and color them and staple them, and my brother would go off and sell them for a quarter.
So you're a natural organizer, a natural understander of where everybody fits and a natural organizer of those talents, starting at the age of 8,
Correct.
aren't you?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, not everybody at 8 years old is thinking of starting a magazine.
Right.
What is it about you that had to do that?
I think we just were talking one day and found a need. We had a ton of kids in our neighborhood, and we thought it would be fun to be able to share stories about our families and what was happening at the local pool. And
who's we?
Just the neighborhood kids. There were lots of large families in the town where I grew up.
What was your role with the neighborhood kids?
I presume the role of the oldest child, even though I am the youngest, and I think I was just sort of born a leader, and people would look to me on what to do next, and that was sort of one of the things that came up.
You're coming up with ideas and organizing everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yes.
What'd you do with the money you made?
I remember about a red bike that was a Schwinn with a white banana seat that later got stolen.
Oh,
but I'm a saver too. I've always been a saver.
That's what I figured. Thomas?
So talk to us earlier. You had mentioned that you come from a large family. You have a lot of cousins. How many cousins?
I have 22 first cousins on my dad's side.
And locally in New Jersey?
They just about all live in New Jersey.
And so what was that like coming from such a large family?
Well, it was mostly, because I'm the fourth of the 22, it was mostly the presumption about my dad's family, him being the oldest of 10, of which I had uncles and aunts that were 15, 17 years older than me. So it was more that connection.
What was your reputation amongst your cousins?
I was definitely an organizer. I was definitely, I was very nerdy when I was young. I was a pleaser, wanted to get everything right. And so I think that
Is there a similarity between your reputation amongst your cousins and what you do for a living nowadays?
I think so.
What's the similarity?
For example, we're having a party this weekend, and I have organized everything. There are 14 girl cousins.
Is there a similarity between starting the magazine and what you're doing nowadays?
Yes, keeping cash flow going, keeping things organized, keeping people engaged.
Daniel?
What did Mom do for a living?
So my mom stayed at home when I was young and then got her business degree when I was in 6th grade. And at the time, she bought and sold magazines, and she ran a couple of old folks' homes.
What did you bring from what your mom did into who you are today in your business?
My mom is extremely calm. She is a problem solver. She's very creative, and people love being around her.
How about Dad?
My dad worked at the same career his entire career. He was an attorney. He worked for our local county, and then he worked for the Attorney General until he retired about 20 years ago at age 57.
Any quality from your dad that you bring today?
My dad is fiercely loyal to his family.
Loyal. Tell us more. Loyalty in business.
Loyalty. He remembers where he came from. And people that do good, strong things around him, he will always remember that. And he will always show allegiance to those people. And I am exactly the same way.
So I understand you were also a gymnast growing up.
I was.
Talk to us about that.
I was a competitive gymnast from about the age of 10 to 17. And I was the New Jersey state champion on balance beam when I was 12 years old. And being a gymnast, I had to be very focused with my time. My resources were limited in terms of time, so I had to make sure I could get my homework in, get my social life in.
What's the connection between inches away from splitting your head wide open and running a business?
Well, I think it's just that focus on the end score, the end goal, making sure that you're doing everything right along the way, practicing as much as you can so that when it comes time to compete, you can hit it out of the park.
And I bet you've had more than one perfect dismount. What's that feel like?
It's amazing. When I landed and won the state championship, I knew it, my coaches knew it, and it was one of the most thrilling moments of my life.
Thomas?
What are the challenges of coming from a large family that has a reputation in the town?
Oh, yeah, good question.
I think standing out, showing that you are different than everybody in your family. When I was 16, I had the privilege of coming here to Washington to be a page for my local congressman, and that was something that definitely made me stand out.
Is there a messaging issue when you've got that big group of cousins in the town that informs the work that you do, that you learned at an early age?
I think it is. I think
how insightful, Thomas.
Being together at big family dinners when I was a kid, just competing for time to tell a story. So you had to be quick, you had to be funny, you have to be engaging, and you'd have to eat fast so you could get food before everybody else did.
That's very insightful, Thomas, especially for real estate.
I'll come back.
So, Susan, so you had a bunch of cousins, and so you felt earlier. Peter asked you, did you feel an obligation because of the family name?
I did. I mean, even just with my siblings who are 1 and 2 years older than I am, I'm very different from my sister. She's an amazing person, but we just have very different ways of doing things. Mm-hmm. So I would walk into class and they would say, "Oh, you're a Matthews." They knew who my siblings were. And so I felt like I was always trying to correct what my brother and sister had done.
That's the messaging thing that Tom was talking about earlier. Isn't that what you do for a living? Create messages and make sure they get published?
It is. My job is to be a connector between people that have great stories to tell and then providing them with the medium in which to tell it.
So you're trying to figure out how to craft everyone's message like you had to do for yourself, and then how to get it out there.
Correct. And make sure that people are listening.
And you've been doing this since you were like 8 years old with this magazine you started.
Correct. And I started my company when I was 27. So I've been at it a while.
Why'd you start your own business? Why'd you go to work for somebody?
I was just finishing my MBA, and I had a client that came to me and said, "I know you're going to get a job and leave this agency, but you should really start your own company. And if it doesn't work, then you can get a job in 6 months at a firm that you always wanted to work at. But give us a chance. Let us work together." And actually, that client was Microsoft, and it was in 1997. Mm-hmm. So it was a huge tech.
Yeah, and you're ready. You're running your own business when you were 8 years old with the magazine. I mean, you understood about a bunch of moving pieces.
Absolutely.
What's the biggest obstacle you ever overcame?
The biggest obstacle ever was my company was audited for its 401k plan. About 10 years into my business, I had a 10-month-old at home, and I was pregnant with twins, and I got an audit that was the darkest time of my life.
Mm-hmm. How'd it come out?
It came out fine because I actually didn't do anything wrong, but the message is I felt like a criminal, and I realized, I don't know what it was, but I felt like I must have done something wrong because why would they audit me? I did not. And I wrote a letter to the commissioner of the IRS and said, "I am a mom, I'm a woman-owned business, pregnant with twins. If I don't get this resolved, I'm going to call the Today Show and Good Morning America, and I will go on camera with my children and tell them this story." And the next day, I got a notice that said that they would settle if I just paid $5,000 for some fee. But the initial notice I got from them said that I had done all these things wrong and there was a possibility of going to jail.
Good for you. It sounds to me like that you understood what's right and what's wrong, and you hadn't done anything wrong.
Correct.
And that you're also very good at messaging, fortunately.
Right.
What's the website address of News Generation?
NewsGeneration.com.
NewsGeneration.com. We've been speaking with Susan Apgood, CEO of News Generation, here on Executive Leaders Radio.
Today, we've had the opportunity of speaking with Mike Dever, founder and CEO of Brandywine Asset Management, Fernando Suarez, president of Fernando Suarez & Company, and Bonnie Sewell, founder of American Capital Planning. Thank you for joining us today.
And Susan, your website address again is?
NewsGeneration.com.
Susan Apgood, CEO of News Generation. I'd like to thank my co-hosts, including Tom McBride, the insightful Tom McBride from Cressa, Daniel Cohen-Dumani from Witham, Smith and Brown, and Peter Schwartz Vistage for giving me a hand structuring the questions, hopefully providing our listening audience an educational and entertaining show. I'd like to thank our listening audience for listening. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a radio show. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders. Thank you for joining us today, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.